Today, we're not just going to run through a list of hacking commands. No, we're going to deconstruct the strategy behind them. We're going to get inside the head of a security pro to see how they think, how they probe, and how they test digital systems. Okay, let's jump right in.
And that's just the perfect way to frame this. We're opening up the toolbox, the one used for ethical hacking, for penetration testing. And look, the goal here isn't to learn how to hack. It's to understand the logic of the tools themselves. What do they tell us about finding weaknesses? And more importantly, how can that help us build better defenses?
All right, so where does it all begin? Well, every single security assessment, every single mission starts with reconnaissance. You have to know what's out there before you can even think about testing it. You've got to map the digital terrain first.
And you know, the simplest way to ask that question is with the classic command, ping. It is literally the digital version of knocking on a door to see if anyone's home. It's step one, the most basic check. Can I even reach you? Are you online?
But here's the thing. Even the most basic tool can be turned up to 11. Step 1, that's just a simple hello. But with step 2, you start poking a bit harder, sending a bigger packet to see how the system reacts. Does it get sluggish? Does it choke? And by step 3, a flood ping, well, that becomes a stress test. You're basically asking, can you handle this, or are you going to fall over? It shows how even the simplest commands can probe for bigger weaknesses.
So pinging one machine is great, but what about all of its neighbors? The next logical step is to scan the whole network segment to find every single device that's currently online. You need the complete map before you can figure out where you want to go next.
And for that, you've got two main schools of thought. Think of Nmap like a detective with a magnifying glass. It performs a really deep, detailed investigation on a few key targets. Masscan, on the other hand, is like a spy satellite. It's built for one thing, pure, mind-bending speed across huge networks, looking for just one specific thing, like an open door, across millions of addresses at once.
So why would you use a tool like Masscan? To find the low-hanging fruit. The whole strategy is to scan the entire internet for something like port 23, which is the port for Telnet. Now, Telnet is old, it's insecure, it's completely unencrypted. Finding an open Telnet port is a massive, flashing red light, and it's a super common way testers quickly find systems that are probably vulnerable.
Okay, phase 2. We have our map. We know which machines are online. We know which doors might be unlocked. Now it's all about walking up to those doors and looking for the cracks, inspecting each target for specific, known vulnerabilities.
And this is where our old friend Nmap comes back into the picture, but this time with more focus. See, knowing a machine is there, that's not enough. With a flag like SV, you're asking a very specific question. What exact version of web server software are you running? And that is absolutely critical, because you can take that version number and check it against public databases of known exploits. O does the same thing for the operating system, and A, well, that's the aggressive scan. It just tries to grab a little bit of everything all at once.
Now for websites, the toolbox gets even more specialized. You've got WhatWeb, which tells you if a site is running on WordPress. Then GoBuster can look for hidden subdomains because, development servers are often forgotten about and left with really weak security. Nico is like a machine gun. It just runs thousands of automated checks for common problems. And then you use GoBuster again, but this time to find hidden folders, because you'd be amazed how often developers leave backup files or admin panels just sitting out in the open. Each one of these tools just expands the potential attack surface.
And since WordPress runs a huge chunk of the internet, of course it gets its own special tool. The main WordPress software is usually pretty solid, but the real danger? It's almost always in the third-party themes and plugins. And that's exactly what WP-Scan is for. It's designed to list out all the users, identify all the plugins, and check them against a massive database of known vulnerabilities.
Okay, but here's the catch. All of this scanning, it's noisy. It's like rattling every doorknob on the street. A good security team, they're going to have alarms set up to detect this kind of activity. So the next level of the game isn't just about finding the cracks, it's about finding them without anybody knowing you were there.
And here are just a few ways testers try to do that. The @PN flag just tells Nmap, hey, don't even bother with a ping, just assume it's online. This gets around simple firewall blocks. The @F flag, that breaks the scan up into tiny little pieces, trying to sneak past older security systems that might get confused. And using decoys is a classic. It makes the scan look like it's coming from a bunch of random IP addresses, making it way harder to figure out who's actually doing the scanning.
And that brings us to the main event, the climax of the playbook.
We've mapped the terrain, we've found the cracks. Phase 3 is all about moving from just looking around to actively getting inside and taking control.
You know, one of the most clever techniques for getting in is called a reverse shell. See, most firewalls are really good at blocking unexpected incoming connections. So a reverse shell just flips the script. It tricks the target machine into making an outbound connection to the attacker. And that kind of traffic, it's often allowed right through the firewall.
So here's how it plays out. On the attacker's machine, they just open up a listener with a tool called netcat. Simple. Then, using some other vulnerability, they get the target machine to run that second command. The target calls out, the attacker's machine picks up the phone, and boom! Just like that, the attacker has a command prompt, a shell, running on the compromised machine. It's brilliant.
But getting a shell, that's often just the beginning, right? You might have access, but maybe you're just a low-level user. The real goal, the ultimate prize, is to escalate your privileges and become the root user, the administrator with complete, total control over the whole system.
And sometimes achieving that ultimate goal can come down to a single, tiny command, like this one. It might not look like much. Seriously, it's just a simple command to change a file's permissions. But this one little line of code, it can hold the keys to the entire kingdom.
So what do you think? What actually happens when you run this? I mean, it's just changing a permission setting on one file, the main program for the command line. How much damage could that possibly do? The answer? It does everything. This command sets a special permission, a little flag, that basically tells the system, hey, no matter who runs this program from now on, I want you to run it with the permissions of the person who owns it. And since the bash program is owned by root, well, you've just turned it into a master key. Any user who runs it from that point on instantly gets a shell with full root privileges. Game over.
So we've walked through the attacker's playbook, but let's pause for a second and flip the whole thing around. Let's shift our perspective. What does all of this mean for the people who actually have to defend these systems?
I mean, think about the journey we just took. It starts with one simple ping. That leads to a network map. The map shows there's a WordPress site. A scan finds one vulnerable plugin out of maybe thousands. That one vulnerability allows the reverse shell to get in. And finally, one little mistake in a file's permissions leads to a total system compromise. It's a chain reaction of small, methodical steps.
You know, for all this serious stuff, this is a world built by humans, and sometimes they have a pretty great sense of humor. Just as a quick reminder of that, think about this little piece of command line culture. The command to list files is ls. A super common typo is SL. So decades ago, some developer decided that if you make that typo, you shouldn't get an error. No, you should get an ASCII art steam locomotive that chugs right across your screen.
And that brings us to the final, and maybe the most important point. Everything we've seen today, this all comes from a basic command cheat sheet. These are the well-known building blocks. This is entry-level stuff. So if this is just the common playbook, what does that tell you about the immense skill, the creativity, and the constant around-the-clock vigilance it takes to actually defend our digital world from the people who have read the entire library?